No, no.
This is Gerald Hyde II, who was just convicted of drug possession at the Benton County Justice Center in Washington State. Hyde was led down the holding cell with other convicts before being taken to prison. But Hyde had other ideas. As an officer turned his back to him, Hyde slipped out and snuck back into the courtroom. He then removed his prison shirt and used it to hide the handcuffs. Hyde then made it down the hallway, ditching his noticeable prison shoes in the process. Before exiting through the lobby and making a run for it out onto the streets. But Hyde's freedom didn't last long. He was recaptured 2 hours after his escape. The 24-year-old was later convicted of second-degree escape and sentenced to 2 years and 2 months in prison. While Gerald Hyde had a nifty attempt to escape justice, what happens when a convict is so fast, even the camera can't keep up? Like in the case of Raiton Woodford, who's in Jefferson County Circuit Court for violating his probation. According to reports, the 29-year-old was previously sentenced to probation for drugs and weapon-related charges. Now, in court, Woodford's girlfriend sat just a few feet away, showing support. During the hearing, a detective took the stand.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be truthful?
That evening, he was charged with the handgun and narcotics.
And if you know, was Mr. Woodford at the time a convicted felon?
Yes, he was.
The courtroom camera remained locked on the witness stand as Judge Barry Willett announced his decision.
Probation revoked in its entirety. Mr. Woodford, I'm going to send you to serve 5 years. Good luck to you. No, ma'am.
Moments later, the unthinkable happened. There was a flash across the camera as Woodford attempted to make a break for it. His girlfriend could be heard pleading him to stop.
The record will reflect that Mr. Woodford made an unsuccessful effort to escape.
Woodford's escape was unsuccessful. He was brought back into the courtroom by deputies and arrested. As Woodford was being ushered away, his girlfriend claimed she was pushed and her hair was pulled by a deputy during the scuffle. Judge Willett allowed her to address the court.
I didn't do anything wrong, and he didn't have to put his hands on me, period.
Okay, I've heard you.
But when she started throwing accusations at the judge himself, he lost his patience.
But you condoning that, right?
I'm not condoning any. No, wait a minute. Come back up here right now.
Okay.
Don't you tell me I'm condoning anything. I just told you what I observed. You made an effort to stop him from leaving. I appreciate that. But in the thick of it, when your boyfriend is fighting with deputies, people might get pushed out of the way.
Woodford's girlfriend faced no additional charges.
She tearfully leaves the courtroom moments later.
In contrast, Woodford faced an additional charge of second-degree escape on top of his 5-year sentence. While no one was injured during Raiton Woodford's escape attempt, what happens when an officer takes a nosedive to catch a convict? Like in the case of Nickolaus Garrison, who was just sentenced for drug possession in Greenfield, Ohio. The 34-year-old was being prepped to be taken to prison when suddenly Let's back up. 2 deputies were restraining Garrison to be taken to jail. However, as one of them turned away for a split second, Garrison bolted. He burst out of the courtroom and made for the stairs as a deputy took a giant leap to catch him. But Garrison managed to slip away and escape. He evaded police for a while before finally being captured at a motel 4 days later. He was later handed a 6-year prison sentence for his efforts. As for the daring deputy, he suffered 4 broken ribs and a concussion, while Nickolaus Garrison's actions resulted in a deputy's hospitalization. What happens when an escaped convict causes a serious car crash?
Okay.
Like in the case of Cyrus Mathews, who is facing misdemeanor charges in Wadsworth Municipal Court in Ohio. The 19-year-old was just sentenced to 60 days in jail for a road rage case.
I'm sorry for, acting immature on the road. I understand that, being on the road, you do have other people's lives in your hand. And, I should have thought about that. Is there, any way that we could reverse this jail time?
Well, you're going to have to go to jail today. If you need to get out to attend the hearing, we can consider furloughs. Okay, but right now you're going to go to jail today.
However, what Mathews did next left everyone stunned.
Okay? So you have to go today, right? No, hey.
After learning his fate, Mathews straight up just walked out of the courtroom. The judge threatened him with felony charges, but Mathews had other ideas.
Have him charged with escape, felony escape if he doesn't get back to this court.
The defendant had a moment of hesitation as the court bailiff tried to reason with him. However, as Mathews' girlfriend followed him out, the two ran over to the parking lot, got into their car, and escaped. Police sprung into action and a high-speed chase ensued.
He was sentenced to jail and took off. I saw him turn north onto Lyman from Maple. He was in an older gray four-door vehicle.
28, he's not. He's running red lights at Hartman, passing on the right at Williams Reserve. My speed's 90, trying to catch up. Wadsworth, I think we're going to have a code 2. We're going to have a code 2 at Akron, 76.
When police finally caught up with the suspect, they found a horrific scene.
The crash mangled 2 vehicles, leaving parts scattered across Akron Road near I-76 and knocking down a gas station sign. An innocent mother, father, and their baby in an SUV suffered minor injuries.
Mathews had crashed his car into another SUV, which had a couple and a toddler inside. Thankfully, they were not seriously injured.
Where's he at? All right, we're gonna have multiple vehicles, airbag deployment. Ma'am, are you okay? Okay.
She's okay. All right, we got squads coming.
Ashley, help them get out. Help them get out. He's up here.
As the gravity of his actions dawned on him, Mathews broke down.
Breathe in and out. 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 Breathe in and out.
Wadsworth, I'm gonna need multiple squads.
I need help, sir.
Okay. Okay. They're tight. What was going on? Why were you taking off?
Because they're trying to lock me up for 90 days and I have a whole life.
So what happened?
I tried to run my...
Why?
I don't know.
Mathews was further charged with aggravated felonious assault and sentenced to 425 days in jail. While Cyrus Mathews' courtroom escape turned out to be a painful lesson, what happens when a wheelchair-bound convict runs for his freedom? Like the case of Joel Delgato, who's being wheelchaired to court in Little Rock, Arkansas. Delgato, who was in jail facing burglary and firearms charges, had allegedly told police he wasn't feeling well and couldn't move his legs.
fake illness or fake injury. That was most likely what happened.
Now, being wheeled into the courthouse, Delgato distracted the officer by saying he had lost his shoe.
What'd you say, OJ? My shoe. Hey, you see a shoe back there? Where is it?
However, what happened next is every law enforcement officer's nightmare. As the officer bent down to pick up his shoe, Delgato sprang up and made a run for it. The officer ran after Delgato, but he was nowhere to be found.
Oh, I'm gonna catch you, baby. I'm gonna shoot your bitch ass. Hey, can you call the police for me? Call the police for me. Hey, call the police. Call the police. What way it go?
Already without a radio, the officer had a hard time calling for backup.
Hey, Hook. The wheelchair dude got up and ran. Yeah. I couldn't catch his ass. And my radio was in the mother. I had my camera on though. He jumped the rail. It's on my camera, bro. Oh, what's that, man?
And while authorities saw the lighter side of things, Delgato was gone for a good few hours. He was later caught from the other side of town, charged with felony escape, and was once again put in a wheelchair.
The 41-year-old is being wheeled into an ambulance, claiming to be injured and unable to walk.
While Joel Delgato successfully managed to deceive an officer, what happens when a judge has to chase after the suspect? Like in the case of Tanner Jacobson and Cody Howard, who were in the Lewis County Courthouse for driving on suspended licenses. As Judge R.W. Buzzard was about to address them, something unexpected happened. Handcuffed and dressed in prison uniform, the two defendants made a run for it. Without a second thought, Judge Buzzard sprang into action. Outside the courtroom, the prison shoes got the better of Howard. The judge followed the two suspects down the flight of stairs and caught up with Howard just as he was about to escape. Jacobson fled on foot for a few blocks before coming back to his senses and surrendering.
I only get like 4 blocks and then I stopped. I just stopped on my own. I'm like, what am I doing right now?
The reason behind their actions? Your guess is as good as theirs.
It was just a split-second decision. I don't even know why I did it. I would be out of here if I wouldn't have ran.
I didn't try to escape to get out. I tried to escape to get well, and I tried to do what I could, do what I could do to get my drug addiction.
Initially facing only a 30-day jail sentence, the two ultimately ended up with significantly larger prison terms. While Tanner Jacobson and Cody Howard's moment of insanity earned them more jail time, what happens when a deputy with an iron grip prevents an escape? Like in the case of Derrick Wright, who was facing speeding charges in a Louisville, Kentucky courtroom. The mood in the court was pretty chill that day.
Yeah. Take a fry that and then kind of crumble it, and then you put it in.
Bacon makes everything better.
But as the judge was looking at his paperwork, Wright attempted to walk away.
Whoa, where are you going?
Where are you going? No, not to the restaurant. No, have a seat. Okay.
So I can't go to the restaurant? Okay. What, can I make a call to my mom? In a minute.
It was discovered that in addition to his speeding charge, Wright had an outstanding warrant for domestic violence.
We can do it.
But Wright believed there was some kind of mistake.
The case got dismissed.
We're verifying it.
I went to court for that Tuesday. It was dismissed.
Sir, I need you to calm down.
We always verify.
Yeah, man.
If it's dismissed, you're good. If not, I'm gonna take you into custody.
I need to call my mama if I'm gonna get arrested because this is something new to me because this is the only thing that I was supposed to go to court for.
Eventually, it turned out the warrant was indeed active.
It's unserved, so it's still good.
Okay.
Okay. Sir, you need to calm down, okay? They're gonna go ahead, they're gonna execute this. They'll let you take some time to call your mom.
But Wright had other ideas. As he was taken to jail, Wright attempted to flee, but a deputy with a strong grip managed to bring him down. 2 more deputies ultimately subdued the situation.
Give me your other arm.
I got it. Hold your arms out. 104, you can cancel that. We got it.
But it was not under control.
Quit fighting. Quit fighting.
Wright kept struggling until a deputy pulled out his taser.
Taser, taser. Stop!
We done?
Are we done?
All right, you all get you up. You're gonna walk back there real nice, okay?
Wright was removed from court, and he was not a happy man. Wright's antics slapped him with additional charges of third-degree assault, resisting arrest, criminal mischief, and disorderly conduct. While Derrick Wright received 50,000 volts of electricity for his actions, what happens when a crazy attempt to escape goes wrong? Like in the case of Mario and Jose Guzman, who were at a pretrial hearing in Jefferson Circuit Court in Louisville, Kentucky. The brothers were facing serious charges of drug possession and trafficking. Now in court, the prosecution attempted to increase Mario's bond from $500 to $15,000 after he faced new charges of burglary.
In your order, it specifically says no further violations of the law. He picked up new charges. He violated the law.
But the defense argued the new recommended bond was too high, as the burglary charges were invalid.
They don't have the victim because he left town because he's a drug dealer. I mean, we might as well say 100,000 full cash, Judge. It's an amount that Mr. Guzman can't post. That's not the purpose of bond. The purpose of bond is to make sure that someone comes to court.
However, the judge agreed with the prosecutor and raised Mario's bond to $5,000.
I agree. New charges obviously have been picked up. Current bond is not appropriate. It will be $5,000 full cash.
Mario then stood up to be taken into custody. But he had no intention of going to prison. The 6-foot, 190-pound defendant rode the gallery benches and headed towards the door before deputies wrestled him to the ground. As one of them pulled out a taser, the courtroom erupted.
He's okay. He's okay.
Please. Jose Guzman tried to calm his brother down.
Sorry, man.
Shut up!
No.
Mario's wife became so distraught that she had to be handcuffed.
No, my baby!
Finally, deputies managed to remove Mario from the courtroom. He faced additional charges of attempted assault and criminal mischief, and his bond was increased to $7,500. While Mario Guzman got his wife arrested for his attempted escape, what happens when officers come face to face with a Satanist? Like in the case of Leonid Greyser, who's on trial for murder in Russia. As per reports, the 18-year-old teenager his sister at their apartment in Moscow, claiming that Satan had ordered him to do it. Greyser was found with his sister's body covered with demonic symbols, painted with blood. During questioning, Greyser was seen smiling and free of remorse.
Зачем так с сестрой расправились?
Greyser claimed he had to kill his sister to get rid of his self-doubts.
Ну а что, должен зарезать ее и убить?
Нет, избавиться от сомнений.
От каких сомнений?
Себе.
Police also found drugs at his apartment, which may have been a factor, but Greyser said he was aware of what he was doing.
Зачем вы так с ней расправились?
Потому что я должен. Себе должен. Я должен так себе. Я осознанно это сделал.
In court, Greyser was put behind a glass cage to prevent him from escaping, but the defendant had other ideas.
Не лезь, не надо.
Куда ты едешь? Сел.
When his first attempt to escape was thwarted, Greyser took the high road.
Я. Слышь, что говорю?
Я скажу.
He somehow managed to squeeze through the roof of the cage and tried to escape through the false ceiling of the courtroom. Stunned officers desperately tried to get to the escaping prisoner. One of them managed to pull his pants down, but struggled to hold Greyser. Finally, more officers arrived and threatened to tase the suspect.
Помогите мне! Помогите мне! Помогите мне! Дайте руку! Дайте руку! Дайте мне руку! Пускайся, говорю! Возьми, бля! Куда нажать? Дайте руку! Сейчас, я тебе дам руку!
Eventually, Greyser gave up, crawled back into his glass cell, and was asked to pull his pants back up.
Ко мне, бля! Все! Сука, все, я спускаюсь! Я тебе дам сейчас! Я спускаюсь! Быстро, блядь! А где он залазит? Да он сверху пролез через это. Ты че, дурак, открывайте, зайдите в клетку, блядь. Потом опять здесь держите, вот здесь. Поди сюда. Поди сюда, одевай. Шаны, одевай.
When the dust settled, Greyser was handcuffed to prevent any further shenanigans. Ultimately, a judge sentenced Greyser to compulsory psychiatric medical treatment every 6 months. While Leonid Greyser's antics may bring some changes to the cage's design, what happens when a drug-fueled convict attempts to escape? Like in the case of 35-year-old Daniel Nicholson, who's facing weapons charges in Adelaide, Australia. Already out on bail, Nicholson was today in court to learn whether his pretrial release was to continue. To his shock, the judge decided to revoke bail.
I revoke bail. I revoke bail. No, you can stop.
Nicholson protested in disbelief, but the judge refused to listen.
What's going on, Pat?
Take a seat. Take a seat.
Miss, please, miss.
Please, miss. I'll tell you what please, miss is.
This is when things got crazy. Realizing he was about to go to prison, Nicholson launched himself over the glass dock, overpowered 2 officers, and landed on the bar table before being tackled to the floor. Amidst all that chaos, a woman made a plea on Nicholson's behalf. Eventually, officers were able to get things under control.
Grab the cops. Don't do anything silly.
The incident saw one officer suffering a broken foot, while another sustained a jaw injury. Nicholson faced additional charges of attempting to escape from custody and recklessly causing harm to a prescribed emergency worker. He later pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 21 months in prison. While Daniel Nicholson's actions could be blamed on drug use, what happens when a convict takes advantage of the law? Like in the case of 28-year-old Edi Villalobos, who's facing a murder trial in Hillsboro, Oregon. In 2021, Villalobos was charged with second-degree murder after he allegedly stabbed a man to death. Now in court, about to stand trial, 2 deputies escorted Villalobos into the courtroom. His shackles were then removed because, under Oregon law, a defendant should not be restrained in front of the jury to avoid prejudice. However, Villalobos was not the one to play by the rules. Just seconds after his hand and leg restraints were removed, Villalobos hopped over a chair and bolted towards the door. He raced through the hallway as deputies desperately pursued him. Villalobos made it down the stairs and exited through the lobby, closing the door behind him. Before finally escaping the building. A 2-hour manhunt ensued before authorities got a call that a person was trying to break into an apartment next door. When police arrived, they found Villalobos hiding under a blanket inside a closet. He was arrested and charged with first-degree burglary and second-degree escape.
This is the moment Villalobos was taken into custody after a 2-hour search. The Washington County Sheriff's Office says he was hiding in a hallway and he was arrested without incident.
A few months later, Villalobos was convicted of the murder charge and sentenced to life in prison, with the possibility of parole after 25 years. While Edi Villalobos was recaptured quickly by an efficient police force, what happens when lawyers have to bring a convict down?
I said, hey, stop, man, don't do this. But he didn't even give me a chance, really. And
like in the case of Isreal Pointer, who was at the Oklahoma County Courthouse for a bond hearing. Facing robbery and firearms charges, the 19-year-old just learned his bond was revoked. Realizing he was about to go to jail, Pointer made a break for it. Bursting through the courtroom door, Pointer escaped the clutches of one deputy while narrowly missing another. Pointer then ran into 2 more deputies who managed to catch him, but he proved to be too slippery for them. Once again, Pointer managed to break free. About to taste freedom, Pointer then encountered a group of attorneys. Instead of getting out of the way, Oklahoma County District Attorney David Prater grabbed Pointer and refused to let go. Other attorneys stepped in and overpowered the defendant. D.A. Prater was no stranger to catching fleeing defendants. Turns out this was his 4th time.
You know, working in this courthouse is a lot like being in the Wild West again. You just never know what's going to happen. Just stepped in.
Pointer was finally taken into custody and additionally charged with resisting arrest. While a vigilant lawyer stood between a defendant and his freedom, what happens when a convict shows Olympic-level athleticism to escape? Like in the case of Gregory Wright, who's facing trial for armed robbery in Detroit, Michigan. Back in 1995, 22-year-old Wright reportedly robbed a man at gunpoint and stole his vehicle. While fleeing from police, Wright slammed into a police cruiser and opened fire, hitting an officer in the arm. A day later, Wright was arrested and charged with robbery and firearms-related offenses. While being taken to court, Wright showed zero remorse for his actions.
All I got to say is I have no remorse for shooting that police officer. He got what he deserved. If I had the opportunity to kill him, I'd kill him.
At his pretrial hearing, the judge set Wright's bond at a staggering $50,000. Knowing for certain he was going to jail, Wright made a break for it. As he was being shown the door which led to his imprisonment, Wright decided to take the opposite route. After escaping the clutches of an officer, Wright made an impressive leap to clear the barricade. But unfortunately, he fell straight into the arms of officers. It finally took 7 officers to subdue the defendant. Wright's bond was eventually removed and he was ordered to remain in prison. As for his trial, Wright was ultimately convicted and sentenced to life imprisonment. While Gregory Wright displayed great athleticism in court, what happens when an escape attempt is straight out of the movies? For that, we go to the Franklin County Courthouse in Columbus, Ohio, where a group of female defendants were on their way to jail after getting arraigned. Among them was 39-year-old Mobley, who was indicted for aggravated theft, and 40-year-old Morrissey, who was charged with drunk driving. However, the two bold women had no plans to go to prison. Shackled to each other at the wrist, Mobley and Morrissey first stepped back at the back of the line. Then, in a desperate attempt to escape, the two women slipped under the prison bus. Shockingly, the court officers, not noticing that they were 2 inmates short, kept loading the bus with more prisoners. Oblivious that 2 prisoners were under the bus instead of inside of it, the bus pulled out onto the streets. A few minutes later, it stopped at a red light when, somehow managing to unshackle herself, Morrissey was seen running away from the scene. However, a local private detective who just happened to pass by noticed Morrissey and chased after her. She was eventually captured and handed over to police.
Within seconds of her escape, Meyer walks the defeated captive back to the courthouse. But nobody at the sheriff's office seems to notice they're missing prisoners.
As for Mobley, she was found hiding in the bushes at the side of the freeway. The escape attempt had left her with a broken back, and she was sent to the hospital. After the dust settled, both women were charged with felony escape. While Tracy Mobley and Mary Morrissey risked their lives for freedom, what happens when a defendant casually walks out of court? Like in the case of Joey Watts, who's on trial at the Grant County Courthouse in Arkansas for threatening to kill a woman. Facing charges of aggravated assault and felony possession of a firearm, Watts is seen sitting beside his attorney while the jury went inside to deliberate his case. The prosecutor was chatting with some women while the court clerk seemed busy on her phone. However, with no court officers in sight, Watts got up and casually strolled out of the courtroom. Once out the door, he coolly went down the stairs. Watts then said something to his family member sitting in the hallway before quickening up his pace and exiting through the main door. As soon as he stepped out, Watts took off. Taking no chances, Watts began to run for his freedom.
He's seen walking down the street and he's gone.
All the while, the jury was still in court.
While Watts was busy escaping, back inside the court, the jury found him guilty of all charges. Watts' freedom was short-lived, as he was arrested the next day. Chief Deputy Pete Roberts said Watts was out on bond, which allowed him to walk around the courtroom freely.
That he was not in custody, he wasn't, an inmate or anything, that allowed him the freedom to move around throughout the courthouse.
He also said a court officer was not present that day due to a staff shortage.
The circuit court's in the process of hiring a new bailiff to prevent that, but they haven't got that done yet.
Eventually, it turned out that 2 other people had helped Watts escape, including his brother, who was sitting behind him in the courtroom. As soon as Watts exited the court, his brother signaled the other guy, and the 2 got up and left. Ultimately, Watts was sentenced to 36 years in prison, 10 years for the attack, and 26 years for gun possession. While Joey Watts' escape seemed pretty chill and casual, what happens when an entire family is involved in a breakout? Like in the case of Dwayne Chaney, who's on a murder trial in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. According to reports, 25-year-old Chaney was accused of shooting and killing Michael Prescott in 2015 after the two got into an altercation over a girl. At his trial, Chaney was allowed to walk freely inside the building as he had a GPS tracker attached to his ankle. During a break, CCTV cameras showed Chaney with his girlfriend Zuri London. After a conversation, the two seemed to go their separate ways. Next, Chaney was seen having a deep discussion with his father, Frank Kiles. The two then exited the hallway. Minutes later, London reappeared. She seemed to be talking to someone on her cell phone, and suddenly, London ran because Chaney had already left the building with his father in an attempt to escape. As the father-son duo casually strolled the streets, London joined them. Then a white van pulled up and all three got inside. The driver of the vehicle was later identified to be Chaney's mother, Florigenia. Once inside, Chaney removed his GPS tracker, threw it out of the car, and sped away to his freedom. Or so he thought. Back in court, Chaney's trial continued without him, and eventually he was convicted of murder. 4 days later, U.S. Marshals caught Chaney hiding in a trash can not far from the courthouse. He was slapped with an additional charge of bail jumping. Ultimately, Chaney was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for killing Michael Prescott. As for his escape crew, they were all charged with felony bail jumping as parties to the crime and obstructing an officer. While Dwayne Chaney had an eventful escape attempt, what happens when a loyal friend helps a convict? This is 21-year-old Callum Finter, who was at the Bradford Youth Court in the UK to support his friend, who is currently facing sentencing. His 17-year-old friend was just handed a 21-week jail term for stealing a cell phone. But Finter had other ideas. As Finter stood outside the courtroom, notice how he pressed a button that flung open an automatic door and allowed his friend to escape. Not only did he facilitate the escape, but Finter also cheered his friend on as he ran. Before anyone realized what was happening, the teenager exited the hallway and took off through the security checkpoint. As 4 officers ran after his friend, Finter followed close behind. The phone bandit sprinted out of the courtroom, and eventually, the officers lost him and gave up the chase. Finter showed up from behind and casually walked past the officers, who were unaware of what he had just done. However, the escape was short-lived, as officers caught the teenage thief 2 days later. He was given 6 months extra jail time for the escape. As for Finter, he pleaded guilty to aiding and abetting his friend's escape and was sentenced to 3 months in prison. While Callum Finter went to jail to help his friend escape, what happens when a convict jumps off from the second floor? For that, we go to Meigs County Courthouse in Decatur, Tennessee, where 33-year-old Rashad Hawkins was just sentenced for failing to pay child support. But the convict was not ready to go to jail. Before he could be taken into custody, Hawkins dipped out of the second-floor courtroom and jumped over the balcony. He took a sheer 10-foot drop into the reception below before getting up as if nothing happened and running towards the exit. Moments later, court employees and officers littered the hallway, trying to figure out what just happened. What happened was that Hawkins went on the run, which would last almost 3 weeks. He was finally caught in Harrodsburg, Kentucky, after neighbors reported an unknown man trespassing their property. Hawkins once again ran and fought with police to avoid capture, but was eventually arrested and charged with criminal trespassing, resisting arrest, and third-degree assault of an officer. He's currently being held without bond. While Rashad Hawkins took the leap of faith to escape, what happens when a defendant takes an officer with him?
Just before 2 o'clock, Rone ran from a second-floor courtroom, charged a waiting deputy at the exit, knocked him down, and got away.
Like in the case of Cory Rone, who was facing charges of possession of a firearm and resisting arrest in Muskogee, Oklahoma. The 39-year-old had a history of criminal activity and was just ordered by a judge to be taken into custody. But Rone had other ideas.
Get a deputy, have this guy arrested right now. Gotta run him.
With no security in sight, Rone decided to take matters into his own hands and walked out of the courtroom. He picked up the pace as 3 court employees went right after him. Rone took the stairs to the first floor. Still, there was no security in sight. As he made it towards the exit, one deputy attempted to stop Big Rone, but he was no match. The brave deputy grabbed onto Rone's shirt, but the 6'3", 200-and-something-pound defendant took the old man with him as he broke through a metal detector, got into his car, and escaped. A manhunt was launched, but a few days later, Rone turned himself over to the police. Rone was additionally hit with charges of escape and assault and battery. His case is still ongoing. As for the deputy, he suffered head injuries which required hospitalization. Thankfully, he made a full recovery.
Now, Sheriff Simmons tells me that the deputy you saw in the video, though, there was injured and suffered leg.
While Cory Rone proved to be too strong for authorities, what happens when a defendant is too fast to catch? Like in the case of Cody Coon, who's on his way to the county jail complex in Boulder, Colorado. The 30-year-old had several active warrants against his name for charges, including resisting arrest, second-degree assault on a peace officer, and retaliation against a witness. Unaware of the warrants, Coon showed up in court to resolve the cases against him. At first, Coon cooperated with the officers. But suddenly, he smelled danger. Realizing he was about to be arrested, Coon fled. Several officers chased after him. But the fleet-footed defendant escaped through the parking lot and disappeared into the woods. A manhunt was launched to catch the fugitive. A month later, Coon was arrested from Weld County. He faced no additional charges for the escape. Coon eventually pleaded guilty to attempted criminal exploitation of an at-risk person, criminal mischief, and harassment. Ultimately, Cody Coon was sentenced to 4 years probation and 18 months of work release.